The MCU has officially introduced the first family, which means we have 4 Fantastic Four movies, so let's rank them all. As always, let me know your ranking in the comments down below, but let's get into it. In last place for me is Fantastic Four 2015. This movie is appallingly bad, genuinely one of the worst comic book films of all time. I think it's all summed up by the fact that the reason the Thing's catchphrase is "it's clobbering time" is because his older brother used to bully him when he was little and used to say that when he would punch him in his fucking face.
Say that again?
I think the castings are honestly the only good part about this, and not even how they're utilized in the film, more so the potential of them, like Michael B. Jordan as a hotshot Johnny Storm, Miles Teller as the smartest man on the planet. I think that works. Kate Mara as Invisible Woman is okay. I don't even know who plays the Thing, to be honest. He also doesn't have pants for the entire movie, which this is very much the definition of a mid-2010s comic book movie in terms of they're just trying to do a different take, and different whether it's because they need to make a movie to keep the rights to these characters, or just different because they want to do something that's so drastically different from the early 2000s films, which are campy and corny and exciting and entertaining and comedic to their core. They definitely went a whole different direction with this film, which none of it actually ends up working. It's kind of comparable to the latter Transformers films, in my opinion, where with Age of Extinction, you're kind of losing any of the real humor and character work that worked in the first couple of films. Like, it was already lacking in the original films, just like the depth isn't really present in the early 2000s films, but at least those are fun. Like Age of Extinction and Fanforstic are just not good. In third place for me is Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. This and Fanforstic's gap is absolutely insane. I love the early 2000s films, and you'll hear me rave about them so much. I recently rewatched Rise of the Silver Surfer, and I think this movie is just so awesome. It's sitting at about a 7 out of 10 for me, and I think the overall characterization of these films and these characters is just really well done. Now, they are very edgy in terms of kind of just being very inappropriate. They somehow make Sue Storm naked in every single movie, but I feel like that's just the early 2000s of it all. In terms of looking past that in the modern day, I still do think the adaptations of these characters work best just because their powers are so normalized within the film. The definition of this is a scene where Sue is complaining to Reed and she just stops him with an invisible force field and he kind of gets smushed in between it, and he's just sitting there and she's just talking, and then she's like, "Oh, my bad, I have to let the shield go." It's just small stuff like that that makes the movie really fun. And then on top of that, this movie is one of the most interesting Johnny plot points that I feel like we've ever really seen explored, with Ben being this cosmically altered being that doesn't fit into society, and he has a girlfriend, someone that he can spend the end of days with, which is what this movie really covers. And Johnny is the hotshot that really has nothing past all of these girlfriends that he's had. I'm not going to say this film is perfect by any means, especially on the villainous side of things. I think Doctor Doom's return is a little bit rushed. I think Galactus overall just doesn't really work in this film, but Silver Surfer is such a great antagonistic figure. Obviously, Shia LaBeouf is much better done in the newer film, but I think Norrin Radd is still a very interesting character.
My service spares my world and the one I love.
Why did you try to protect me?
Because you remind me of her.
The film feels like it comes in at just over an hour and a half, and I feel like it's trying to do too much for its own good. But for what this movie is, I really do like it, and I know a lot of people don't like this film and it hasn't necessarily aged well, but I really do love it. In second place for me is Fantastic Four 2005. Obviously, this is the origination of the characters that I love in Silver Surfer, and I just think this is such an interesting origin story. I think the way that they build up Victor Von Doom and Reed Richards is honestly the most entertaining part of this film. I think the love triangle aspect is more in like a director was kind of a misogynistic type of way. I find that obsession with Jessica Alba in the first film to be such a telltale sign of what the priority of films was in the early 2000s. I'll talk about Fantastic Four First Steps in just a second here, but I'm not going to say that 2005's Fantastic Four is absolutely perfect in terms of this is exactly the characters ripped from Jack Kirby's comics, but these characters do feel like they have entertainment value. And I wouldn't say they're a one-for-one adaptation, but the chemistry does feel like that. I think Doom as a villain, like singularly, his adaptation isn't great, but when you have really interesting writing between Reed and Von Doom, I think that carries a lot of the film.
What did you do?
Exactly what I said I would. I built a better, stronger being and outsmarted the great Reed Richards.
It feels like the early 2000s priorities in the Fantastic Four films was not only the chemistry, but also how these powers are implemented into the real world. Being an origin story proves to be so important for these characters because the reason why the cosmically altered DNA actually makes sense and makes these characters unique is because of their lives before that and after that. And I like that they get these powers before like an hour into the film, but I also like the fact that we're not rushing into it and we do have a little bit of context on the world, Reed, Sue, and Victor. There's so many great moments, just like Rise of the Silver Surfer, in my opinion, in regards to their powers. And at the end of the day, I just feel like it's super entertaining and they're enough like their characters to where all of the chemistry between the performances can intertwine to make, in my opinion, a really fun movie. I did give Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer a 7 out of 10. I'd probably give this like a 7.5 out of 10. I really enjoy both of these movies. But in first place is Fantastic Four First Steps. This is the first time the Fantastic Four have really been introduced into the MCU, but my biggest flaw for this film, and obviously I really do like this film a lot, it's the best Fantastic Four film, I think making them in their own separate world within the MCU was kind of the biggest flaw of this film, especially in regards to how this film resolved, which I won't get into spoilers here. I have a full spoiler review coming soon on the channel, but it kind of made the world feel insignificant, and it kind of made me not really care for the overall story, and I think that them skipping the origin of these characters is kind of where this originates from, in that as a fan of the early 2000s films, what makes the dynamics and character moments so interesting is that we've seen them before and after their DNA got cosmically altered. In this film, we don't really have those stakes, and for that reason, Ben Grimm is so poorly written in this film. Johnny Storm doesn't really feel like a true adaptation of the character, but I will say Sue and Reed are phenomenally done here. I think Franklin is pretty shoehorned in, but I think Silver Surfer and Galactus are also really well done. Shia LaBeouf is one of the most interesting versions of Silver Surfer that we've ever gotten, truly encapsulating the idea of isolation that this character has. In terms of the retro futuristic vibe of this film, I think it works so well, especially in the first half of this film when the connection between the Fantastic Four and the members of this world actually feels real. Now, getting into the second half of the film, I don't really think that relationship is as present just because they're trying to plot how to defeat Galactus in the Baxter building for 90% of the second half of this film, which kind of takes away the whole they've been in this universe for 4 years thing. But nevertheless, I had a very fun time with this film. I think the good definitely outweighs the bad, but every single fear I had going in definitely came true. It does make me a little bit more worried for Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, just as it feels like there is no priority and no rush going into these films, which I feel like it's kind of what you need when the stakes haven't really been set yet. But I'm very excited for the future of the MCU still, and I'm really happy that we got the best Fantastic Four movie in 2025. But guys, that is my ranking of all 4 Fantastic Four films. Let me know your ranking in the comments down below. Check out my MCU ranked if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.